Gilbert was ordained to the priesthood and served as parish priest at Seppringham. He lived simply, consumed little food, and spent a good portion of many nights in prayer. His congregation included a small number of young women who told him of their desire to live in religious life. A house was built for them adjacent to the church. Later, lay sisters and lay brothers were added to work the land. The religious order formed eventually became known as the Gilbertines, the only one of English origin founded during the Middle Ages. It came to an end when King Henry VIII suppressed all Catholic monasteries. Gilbert died in 1190 and was canonized only 13 years later. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
This is Jesuit Father Robert McTagg, your daily host of the Catholic Current. Join me on Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern to reconnect with author Matthew Pleasy. We're told that every Catholic needs a good catechism, but which one is right for you? We're going to talk about the best catechism you've never heard of. Hear all about it on Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, coming to you from the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
Coming up on A Catholic Take, real estate analyst Paul Holub is going to be my guest. We're talking interest rates and the future of the real estate market. Is it good? Is it bad? Tune in to find out. Also on the program, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers joins us. We're getting ready for the holy season of Lent, how to make it penitential, not just self-improvement. But he and I have lost a lot of weight over the past year, so we're talking about why men need and must be in shape. All of that and more on A Catholic Take, 7 a.m. Eastern. This is Joe McLean, and you're listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of the truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. So good to be on with you on this Thursday. Praise be to God. We're going to have a great show for you today. The real estate market update, the 2023 real estate forecast. What does it look like? Interest rates are rising. What about inventory and housing prices? How is that going to affect you, your friends, your family? We're going to have that conversation with Paul Holub, good friend of mine who is a real estate analyst. He's going to be on at 15 past the hour to give us his take on the 2023 real estate forecast. Do join us if you can. And then at 30 past the hour, the dynamic Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers will be our guest. We're going to talk about losing weight. He and I both have lost a lot of weight in the past year. We're going to talk why it's important for men to try to stay fit. It's part of their vocation. Also, how to make Lent penitential and not self-improvement. All of that coming up in this hour. We have a lot to get to. Don't forget, I'm live streaming to all kinds of platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Rumble, and more. Search for the Station of the Cross, A Catholic Take, or Joe McLean. You'll find them. And there I will post a link that you can join the A Catholic Take Insiders List, which comes with goodies in tow, right in your inbox every single week. I'll send my first email out tomorrow. So do join us by clicking that link. Let's pray. Let's get started. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And now your saint of the day, Saint Juliana of Nicomedia. Pray for us. Saint Juliana was born the daughter of a pagan named Africanus, who promised the girl to a young nobleman named Elvisia. Juliana put him off, first insisting that he become the prefect of Nicomedia. When he became the prefect, she insisted that he become a Christian before they could marry, a condition Elvisia would never, ever meet. Her father, who hated Christians himself, abused Juliana fearfully to get her to change her mind, but she held fast. Ancient manuscripts describing these horrors put them in terms of her fighting a dragon, and she is often depicted that way in art. Elvisia called her before the tribunal during the persecutions of Maximianus, denounced her as a Christian, and she was martyred. Hers was a favorite story for telling and creation of stained glasses all over the churches in the Middle Ages. She was burned, boiled in oil, and beheaded in the year 305. Saint Juliana of Nicomedia, pray for us. And now your headline news. The Post-Millennial reports Buffalo supermarket shooter sentenced to life in prison without parole. Peyton Gendron pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and domestic terrorism, among other charges. Gendron killed 10 people in a racially motivated massacre in Buffalo, New York last year. The shooting took place at Tops Friendly Markets in a predominantly black area of the city. Daily Wire reports the SBA won't even try to collect on PPP loans that are supposed to be paid back, citing equity. The Small Business Administration, which administered the Pandemic Aid Paycheck Protection Program, said it will not seek to collect on loans that should have been paid back, but were not, as long as the amount is $100,000 or less. The vast majority of the 12 million loans given out in 2020 and in 2021 were under $100,000. I guess the taxpayers will just bear that burden. WKBN 27 is reporting it's now not just the chickens dying in the coops in Ohio, indoor pets are dying too. Andrea Belden and Zach Kramer were living with their family in East Palestine and were out to dinner when the train crashed there just about 12 days ago now. They rushed home to get their relatives and pets to evacuate the area. Later that night, they noticed that their cat Leo was sick. They took it to the vet. According to the documentation from Pittsburgh Veterinarian Specialty and Emergency Clinic who treated their pet, they believe the cat's condition could be due to vinyl chloride gases, which are known to cause heart, respiratory, and liver issues in humans and are clearly killing lots of pets in that part of Ohio right now. The cat did die from exposure to the chemicals. LifeSite News reports United Airlines employees file lawsuit over tyrannical government-backed COVID mandates. In what promises to be a landmark legal case with broad implications for the entire nation, a group of United Airlines employees terminated or laid off or otherwise living in limbo after being denied religious exemptions from their company's COVID-19 mandates have filed a lawsuit claiming that the airline colluded with the U.S. government, acting as its puppet to force employees to receive a dangerous experimental drug that is not actually a vaccine, but a form of gene therapy. Their case asserts that when the Biden administration's unconscionable goal of requiring every working person across the land to submit to the COVID-19 mandate was stymied by Congress and the courts, the administration found a willing accomplice in the private sector to carry out its totalitarian intent. Their case, 321 points spanning 64 pages, naming UAL, its executives, and UAL board members as defendants. It was filed January the 19th in Cook County, Illinois, where United Airlines is headquartered. So January 19th, what's today? A month later? Why are we just now learning about this? Just curious. And those are your headline news. The gospel comes to us today from Mark chapter 8, verses 27 through 33. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi, Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anybody about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed and rise after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this, he turned around, looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter, and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. The Obligate, an 11th century archbishop, would say, "For the Lord, wishing to show that his passion was to take place on account of the salvation of men, and that Satan alone was unwilling that Christ should suffer, and the race of man be saved, called Peter Satan, because he savored the things that were of Satan, and from unwillingness that Christ should suffer, became his adversary. For Satan is interpreted the adversary." I want you to let that sink in for a second. Whose side are you on? Satan's or the Lord's? It's a pretty stark contrast, wouldn't you say? A Catholic commentary in Holy Scripture would say, Caesarea Philippi was a new city built by Philip the Tetrarch on the site of the ancient Peneus, near the sources of the Jordan. In this pagan district, Christ was away from the malicious intrigues and demands of the Pharisees and could discuss freely with the disciples the fundamental question of his own identity and mission. There's also a pagan temple dedicated to Caesar there, built on the side of a rock next to a pit that they called the Gates of Hades. So we have a very visual, stark, huge, massive rock with a temple built upon it as the backdrop for this particular speech. Let that sink in as well. The 19th century Father McKeeveley says, quoting Eusebius, that St. Mark, who was generally supposed to have written his gospel from the dictation of St. Peter himself and his master, when he comes to describe the magnificent confession of Peter's faith and the exalted dignity conferred on him in consequence, passes it over almost in silence, whereas whatever tended to Peter's humiliation, such as his denial of the Lord, these Mark fully describes. Oh boy. So anything that makes Peter look good, no big deal. Anything that makes Peter humiliated, oh man, let us stop. Let's ponder. Let's take our time on this one. Isn't that something? I find that very, very fascinating. A Catholic commentary in Holy Scripture points out this prediction of the Passion and Resurrection was intended as a corrective to false ideas of triumphant messiahs. Now that the disciples firmly believed that Jesus was the Messiah, it was necessary that they should understand that he was a suffering Messiah who would be rejected by the leaders of the Jews. Peter understood the meaning of this word, which Christ spoke openly, but he was obviously taken aback by the prediction of the fate of Jesus at the hands of the Jews and began to remonstrate with him. He was rebuked by Christ because his protest showed that his thoughts were out of harmony with the divine plan. It was God's will that the Messiah should suffer. God's holy will that he should suffer. Are we on the side of God? Do we think as God does or as Satan does? And we don't want suffering. We don't want to see Good Friday Passion. We just want Easter Sunday resurrection. Well, you can't have it without going through Good Friday first. Hey, we're going to be right back. Paul Holub's coming up with the 2023 market forecast. All that and more of A Catholic Take is up next. Don't go anywhere, but do share us with a friend. I would be incredibly grateful.
Each weekday from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern, the Station of the Cross brings you Mother Miriam Live.
We are not to be discouraged. We can walk around angry. We have a right to be angry. We have a right to righteous anger. We have a right to be upset. But I tell you what, we do not have a right to. We do not have a right to lose hope.
Tune in from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern for Mother Miriam Live on the Station of the Cross and our free iCatholic Radio mobile app.
Join 1 million volunteers worldwide and help end abortion where you live by participating in the February 22nd to April 2nd 40 Days for Life Vigil. Let God use you to save a life, change the heart of an abortion worker, and close your local abortion facility. Visit 40daysforlife.com and sign up to pray. Now is the time to be part of the beginning of the end of abortion.
Our bumper magnets are a great way to promote the gospel as proclaimed through Catholic radio. We hear all the time from new listeners who were introduced to the station through a bumper magnet. We'd be happy to send you a bumper magnet so that others can come to know our Lord. Just go to thestationofthecross.com and find our bumper magnet request button under the About tab. That's thestationofthecross.com under the About tab.
Are you ready to take on the world of flesh and the devil with just the facts? This is Jesse Romero, host of Jesus 911, heard weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm joined each day by a variety of co-hosts like Ruben Nava, Paul Clay, Dan Schneider, and my amazing wife, Anita Romero. We tackle Catholic devotions, spiritual warfare, family life, saving America, and everything in between. Join us each weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific for Jesus 911. God bless you. Keep the faith.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. So good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Coming up at 30 past the hour, the dynamic Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers will be our guest. He and I have dropped a ton of weight over the past year, so I think we're going to have a good conversation about why men ought to try to stay in some kind of shape, not necessarily the round one, but other kinds of shape, why it's important to their vocation as husbands and fathers and men in general. Also, how to make Lent penitential and not just self-improvement. All of that coming up with Deacon Harold at 30 past the hour. Do join us if you can. Joining us right now, though, is Paul Holub. PaulHolub.com is his website. He's a real estate agent, but he's also an analyst of the market, and he's here to give us the 2023 market forecast. Good morning to you, Paul Holub.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, praise be to God. Grateful for your time today. Rising interest rates, that's generally a bad sign for the real estate market. How do you see the 2023 market?
Yeah, a couple different points. I mean, first off, home sales are expected to drop this year. I mean, they peaked in 2021, and they've just kind of been falling, last year. And then they're expected to drop further, about 7% here in 2022. And despite the number of home sales dropping, home prices are actually expected to kind of be about the same. The National Association of Realtors expected a slight increase in home prices nationally, about 0.3%, all the way to Realtor.com, so about 5.4% increase this year. So obviously dependent on what part of the country you're in. But we are expected to see prices kind of, slightly increase this year, which is kind of funny because the mortgage interest rates literally doubled in a year. This time last year, we were at less than 3.25. And then, earlier last year, it was like we were at 6.5, so it literally doubled in less than a year. And, when your mortgage rate jumps up 100% in a year, it really kind of is a bit of a shock to the market. So I think that's what we saw last year, with the falling number of home sales from like June onward.
I was looking at a report earlier that said some of the states that had the biggest swings in pricing change. Florida, 15.2% topped the list. Vermont came in at 13.5%. South Carolina at 12.2%. Maine, 11.4%. North Carolina, 10.9%. Georgia is on this list. Arkansas. That's a lot of southern states there that are getting hit. I think even in the Houston market, which is the market that you specialize in, even that took like an 8.9%. So some big swings in the southern states. Any reason why the southern states would be affected as much?
Yeah, I mean, that's where people are moving to. 350,000 people left California in 2022, 300,000 left New York, 142,000 left Illinois, and they're going to warmer, lower tax, more affordable states. 320,000 people moved to Florida. Texas had an increase of 230,000, and the Carolinas about 184,000. So that's where people are moving to. And, tax savings is important, but if you think about it, I saw a stat that a typical New Yorker leaving New York will save about 34% of their annual housing costs moving to a lower cost state. And that's about 15 times greater savings than would be from just the tax savings alone. So, yeah, they are saving on taxes, but just the cost of living is so much cheaper that they're just saving a ton of money.
Well, interest rates are still on the rise, though. It's just the other day they were saying, well, we're not quite there yet. They won't tell us what they want to get for inflation, average. They don't give us the actual number, but they just keep saying, yeah, we're going to have to raise it again, but hopefully soon it'll all come down. So as those interest rates go up, mortgages become less, right? So like as you said a minute ago, so that obviously affects the outcome. People don't want to borrow money at a high interest rate. So buying and selling slows down. How about inventory? How is inventory affecting all of this right now?
Yeah, we are in a shortage of homes. We spoke at it previously that, we didn't build enough homes in the 2010s, 2010 through 2019. So we're really starting to feel that. So until that inventory really shifts, to have more supply, we're just going to be in a seller's market for the next couple of years is what they're predicting. And so that just means we're going to have higher prices, and it's like a double whammy. We have, lower inventory, higher prices, and higher interest rates now. So it just makes housing less and less affordable, unfortunately.
Okay, so if you're buying and selling in this market in this time, what do you recommend we do? I mean, how do we get the most bang for our buck if we're buying, and how do we get the biggest return on our investment if we're selling? I mean, we both want to win in this circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my advice to home sellers and buyers is obviously going to be a little bit different, but for your home sellers and some many people are going to wear both hats. Like, hey, I got to sell my house and I got to go buy the new one. Which you can do that in this market in most places, whereas last year it was just like, hey, good luck trying to, buy a new home while you're trying to sell yours and at the same time, and that transition is a bit of a challenge. You should be able to do that now in this market, that things slow down slightly. So that's good. And for home sellers, just know it's still a seller's market. It's still in your favor to go out there and sell your house. Prices are lower than they were last year in June when they peaked, but they're still near all-time highs. So it's not like it's been a huge drop-off in most markets. And the other thing, too, is just to be patient. The average time it took to sell a home, this time last year was 62 days nationally. Now it's 75 days. So it's slowing down a little bit more. So, price drops have increased, I think, 7% year over year. So we're starting to see just a little bit more negotiating. Sellers just kind of like, okay, great. This is what I need to do to get my house sold now. They have to be more, competitive in the market. Now for home buyers, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to ask, is there any factors that if there's someone out here that's trying to sell a home right now, one, I don't recommend burying St. Joseph. Pray to him. Do a novena to St. Joseph. Don't just bury him, okay? Don't buy some cheap plastic thing and put it in the ground. Don't do that. Just pray a novena to him, number one. Number two, what else could they do to help make their home stand out in a crowd right now? Obviously, making sure that it's sort of fixed up, ready to go. But what would you recommend that they do to get their house ready for market?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about the simple little things you can do. Move-in ready homes tend to sell faster and for more money than just those kind of normal lived-in houses. So very simple things, just at least cleaning the carpets, doing fresh paint touch-ups, those kinds of things, fresh mulch on the exterior. And then I always, have the home staged, just have a stager come in for 3 hours. Hey, just kind of move some stuff around, depersonalize it, and just make it look great for pictures. just because, you sell a home differently than you live in it. And, those little things, I think, make a difference. And then obviously anything like you walk in, you have big cracks in the ceiling. Okay, well, that's going to be a concern for buyers. Do we have foundation issues? Is that, some of those kinds of items you don't want a buyer walking in and already having those big questions like, are there bigger issues here that I'm not seeing? That's just kind of the simple things right now. And honestly, if you do those basic things, most homes are going to stand out as compared to the competition.
And what about the other side of that equation? What's the best? Okay, insider secrets, just me and you, Paul. That's just us two, just between us. What magic words can our agents say to help us get the best deal if we're trying to buy a home?
Yeah, I wish there was a magic word. I wish there was. But for the most part, it's persistence. I think you're getting out there and in the market, and home buyers are going to have more options this year as inventory slowly increases. Because
it was like a year ago at this time. But the seller could sell to almost anybody they wanted for prices well over asking because they were lining up. There was so many offers to choose from. A year ago now, the market has drastically changed since that last year. So now it seems like it's evened out. And as you said, the time on market has increased to like 72 days. So it should be a little bit more friendly to buyers, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Yeah, we had a bit of a frenzy there, and then when interest rates, increased as they did, finally buyers like, okay, got a little concern. Where are interest rates going? What's going to price? I don't want to buy at the top of the market. But we are still seeing multiple offers, in many markets. It's just down dramatically. So still kind of keep that in mind that, hey, you could have a multiple offer situation, particularly those really nice move-in ready homes. Like there's going to be competition. But I think a lot of buyers are a little bit kind of, gun shy. Whereas last year they're like, oh, okay, I'm dropping $50,000 higher than the list price because I want this house. I think I've seen a lot of buyers like there's multiple offers. Okay, I'm not interested. So they're a little bit more cautious. And that might change in the springtime here coming up. But yeah, buyers are definitely a little bit more conscious about that.
So, okay, looking at 2023 then on the whole, when would you recommend either putting your house on the market or and again, looking at the flip side of that, when you might want to consider buying? Is tax season a good time to do that when people get their tax checks back and they can put it towards down payments or closing costs or things like that? Or should they wait further into the summer?
Yeah, good question, Joe. So, the peak selling season, at least for us, is April, May, June. Sometimes July, so that's where most homes are selling, the highest average sales prices. And then in the fall and winter months, things slow down. There's lower inventory and prices tend to drop. So, if you could, sell during the spring and summer and then buy in the later times of the year where it's, a little bit slower, less competition, you do have less options. But, most people are, okay, they sell their house in spring and also have to buy a new home that same time. So, that's a little bit how it would go. So if you really wanted a deal, you have more options and less competition kind of in the fall and winter months.
And let me ask you this, but people who are considering moving, because you talked about that at the beginning of our conversation, how many people are moving? And it seems like a mass exodus coming from the Western states, but the Western state pricing seemed to be a little bit more stable than Southern pricing goes. Is there any piece of advice you might offer? What should they consider when they're looking to migrate from maybe out west over into the South or back east? Is it property taxes or the stability of the market? What should they be looking at?
Oh, obviously, cost of living is huge, and obviously lifestyle. So those are obviously important. People are moving to Arizona from the West Coast. They're moving to Arizona. They're moving to Idaho, Utah, Nevada, and normally they wouldn't be moving there, So, but it's just, hey, they're moving to a lower cost of living, and so, I think one economist is like, people are moving from beautiful California to like these really undesirable areas of the nation, as he put it. And I was like, oh, okay. Just because of the strong driving force of more affordable housing, less regulation, less taxes. And so I think it's really just a place that you feel comfortable with.
Wow. Norman, who's commenting on one of our live video feeds right now, says sales here in Hawaii continue to increase. We are now at $1 million medium. Wow. Have a good time with that one, Norman. Better you than me, my friend. Paul Holub, very grateful for your 2023 real estate market update. Thank you for that. We look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, go check him out on his website, paulholub.com. That's PAULHOLUB, paulholub.com. I'll put the link in the live video chats. We're going to be right back. Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers is going to be our guest. Plus, I have more breaking news and stories all coming up on A Catholic Take. Do join us if you can, but I would be grateful if you would share us with a friend. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Catholic Take is coming up next.
Can we be happy without God? Atheists say yes, we Christians say yes, but only to a certain extent. What's our reason? There are some natural human desires that can be satisfied without living for God. The desire for sensory pleasure, success, and loving relationships. There are certain desires, however, that can't be satisfied without God. For example, we don't just desire some love, we desire infinite love, love without limit. This is manifest when we get frustrated with imperfect manifestations of it. The same is true for knowledge, justice, and beauty. Since God alone is infinite in these perfections, only He can satisfy our desires for them. Therefore, to borrow from St. Augustine, without God, our hearts would be forever restless. And my friends, a restless heart is an unhappy heart. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Do you love listening to the Station of the Cross on your car radio, but sometimes find yourself driving outside the listening area? Never miss another minute of your favorite show. Download the iCatholic Radio app so you can listen anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. The iCatholic Radio app is available for your phone in the Apple Store or for your Android phone in Google Play. Visit thestationofthecross.com for more information.
Do whatever He tells you. Do you realize that those are the last recorded words of Mary in the Scripture? Because that simple expression summarizes her entire life. It's all that she was, all that she was called to be. It fulfilled her entire vocation. Do whatever Jesus tells you.
That's Sermons for Everyday Living, weekdays from 6 to 7 a.m. Eastern on the Station of the Cross.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take. And here are your headline news. Ground news reports Russia says U.S. should prove that it did not destroy the Nord Stream pipelines after a bombshell report. While we have been distracted by UFOs and chemical disasters, we have somehow forgotten that a bombshell report was released just over a week ago claiming that the U.S. was behind the scuttling of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline bombing. Moscow considers the destruction of Nord Stream 1 and 2 last September, quote, an act of international terrorism, close quote, and will not allow it to be swept under the rug, the embassy said in a statement. The United States should try to prove it was not behind the destruction of the Nord Stream gas pipelines that connected Russia to Western Europe, the Russian embassy said to the United States on Thursday. The White House has dismissed the allegations as, quote, utterly false and complete fiction, close quote. Fox 3 is reporting 1 dead, 3 injured in a shooting at El Paso shopping mall. 4 people were shot Wednesday evening at the Cielo Vista Mall in El Paso, according to the police. 1 person has succumbed to their wounds, according to Sergeant Robert Gomez. Let's pray for the repose of their soul. Just the News is reporting the national debt to reach $46 trillion by 2033. That's 118% of the GDP. According to the report, the national debt is projected to increase by $22 trillion over the next 10 years, reaching $46 trillion by 2033. An analysis of the report by the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget found that the nation's deficit will total $1.4 trillion for fiscal 2023 and more than double to nearly $2.9 trillion by 2033. The nonprofit budget watchdog group also concluded, based on the CBO report, that interest costs on the debt will grow from $475 billion in 2022 to more than $1.4 trillion, a record 3.6% of GDP by 2033. Just imagine if you always spent more than you brought in. What kind of life would that be? I'm just curious. Anyway, Breitbart reports Black Hawk military helicopter crashes near Alabama highway. No survivors. The fatal crash happened around 3 p.m. near the intersection of Brewell Road and Highway 53, just outside of Huntsville, Alabama. The Madison County Sheriff's Office confirmed the exact cause of the crash, as well as the number of people on board, remains unknown at this time. According to Fox News, the helicopter caught fire on impact, and there were no survivors. Pentagon officials later confirmed with CBS News that the helicopter crashed during a training mission with the Tennessee National Guard. Never seems to be a moment of opportunity that we must always continue to pray for those that are facing eternity. Let us keep them their repose in our prayers today. And those are your headline news. Joining us right now via video chat is my good friend Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, the dynamic deacon. His website, deaconharold.com. Good morning to you, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers.
Good morning, Joe. It's great to be with you as always.
Praise be to God, my friend. Very grateful for your time. Now, I got to see you, I don't know, a couple months ago, and man, you look great. You look really great. You and I have lost a lot of weight over the past year, and we took different routes to get there. Now, I'm down over 100 pounds now from a year ago now. What's your success? Are you willing to share the numbers?
Yeah, I've lost about 85 pounds since
Praise be to God.
May of last year.
And how did you do that? What was your secret to getting down that far?
Well, yeah, it's not a secret. It's one of those things, Joe. You know, I've struggled with my weight most of my life, and during the pandemic, we switched insurance companies, and so we had to switch doctors. And I went to see the new physician, and back then I was over 320 pounds, and wow. So of course we talked about my weight and she said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I was doing keto, you know, and I've done it twice before. I lost a bunch of weight and gained it all back, then lost a bunch of weight again and gained it all back during the pandemic when I was home and I couldn't travel. I was out of my rhythm, out of my routine. And quite frankly, I was using food as a coping mechanism for, you know, kind of not depression, but the sadness. And I was feeling, you know, kind of being trapped in the house and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I'm not making excuses, but that's just the reality of it. And so she said, yeah, keto does work, you know, for people. She's not against it or anything. And she said, have you tried plant-based eating? And I looked at her and I said, plant-based? You know, she specifically didn't say vegan or vegetarian. She said plant-based. And I said, well, no, I'm from New Jersey, and I grew up on burgers and steak and hamburgers and bratwurst. There's no way I could do anything like that. And she said, you know, here's the thing, you know, when you're doing keto, you know, it's great, but you cut out a lot of the carbs, and sometimes when you crave the carbs, you have a tendency to eat carbs and gain all the weight back again. She said with the plant-based eating, she said, you know, you're not eating meat per se, but you're getting the protein from other sources like tofu and plants, things like that. So your body is not missing the protein like it does on keto when it misses carbs. And I said, are you trying to tell me the steak is the same thing as beans? And she laughed, and then she asked me what blood type I was. I said, A positive. I knew because I give blood regularly to Red Cross. And she goes, oh, this kind of eating is perfect for your blood type. And I said, what? Because I've never heard about the connection between blood type and the food that you eat. And so then she told me about a documentary on Netflix called Game Changers. She goes, you should watch that. I'm like, well, okay. So I did. I researched it and did all that. And I followed up with her on a video chat, which is what you do with doctors now. I guess sometimes you can't see them in real life. You can see them via video. And she goes, have you looked at it? I said, I looked at everything. He said, I said, I'm willing to give it a shot. She goes, try it for a month. I said, I'm not going to last 3 days. She said, she goes, try it for a month. She goes, at first, your stomach is going to be like, what are you doing? You're probably going to feel sick and maybe nauseous. And as your body goes through the changes, your stomach enzymes get used to the new way of eating. But after that, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was May of last year. And I've been doing it ever since.
Praise be to God. Well, you look great. Yeah, I mean, you look great.
Thank you. You do too. I mean, last time I saw you, I said, John, I mean, it's very noticeable. You look fantastic yourself. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I went carnivore. That was my thing. I've been on carnivore now just over 6 months, and we're down over 100 pounds. Praise be to God. But at my peak, which was more than a year ago, but at my peak, I was over 400 pounds. So I've been a big boy for a long time, and I also struggled with weight most of my life. I had to lose weight just to go to Marine Corps boot camp. So I remember hustling hard to get that done. And in those days, we're talking late 80s, early 90s, counting fat grams was the trend for weight loss. And so I remember I could only have 25 fat grams a day, that kind of thing. And now, I've only been eating meat with some rare exception to that rule for the last 6 months. And it's worked well, but I got to be honest with you. I'm afraid that the first time I smell a carb, I'm going to gain 87 pounds back. So I'm not sure where this train ends. But one thing that it has struck me during the process of losing this weight, now I would love to say that when I started, hey, it was all about, I need to get in shape and I need to be in peak physical form for my wife, for my kids, for my family. But the reality is that wasn't my motivation. It was more of, I've got inflammation issues. I've got, some problems that I must deal with or else. And I think this has been a kind of a wake-up call for me personally. And I'd like to get your opinion on this because as men, it's our the physical state is true for men and women, but I think it's more so for men. We're expected to be leaders, protectors, and providers, priest, prophet, and king in our home. And if we are out of shape, dealing and struggling with health issues as a result to being overweight, for instance, well, how can we fulfill that vocational role? What say you, Deacon Harold?
No, you're absolutely right, Joe. I mean, on page 2 of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, it says that the Lord put the man in the garden to till and to keep it, right? And those words till and keep are abad and shamar in Hebrew. So abad means a work that's in the form of service, and shamar means to protect and defend. So literally, God put man in the garden, gave him his mission, his calling, his vocation to serve, protect, and defend everything that is being entrusted to him. Right. And what was being entrusted to him first? His wife. Right. So on page 2 of the Bible, we get our mission and calling to serve, protect, and defend. Now, in order to do that effectively, we have to be in shape physically, mentally, and spiritually. Right. Body, mind, and soul. It's a holistic approach to our relationship with God. And if one of those things are out of sync, then we can't properly do what God has called each one of us to do as men, right? So you're absolutely right. And then you talk about priest, prophet, and king, right? So those are charisms that we receive in baptism, right? And so the priest, what's his main job? Is to offer sacrifice, right? To die. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And how did he show his love for the church? He died for her. He gave his life for her, right? And we cannot do that effectively as men if we're not willing to die and to sacrifice those things that separate us from God's love, that prevent us from fully becoming the men who God created and calls each one of us to be. And, for me, spiritually, things were fine. I'm praying at the office every day, rosary, chaplet, check. Mind wise, you can see behind me, I got like tons of books, and I've written 5 books. My 6th book is coming out in the fall. I'm working already the outline for my 7th book. The mind thing, check. Well, the only thing I couldn't check off that list was the body, physically. And I make all kinds of excuses. Like I travel 250,000 miles a year. I'm on the plane, and I'm away from my family, sacrifice a lot. I deserve that piece of cheesecake, for dessert, when they take me out to the restaurant. I deserve this because of the sacrifices that I'm making. And those are just excuses for not really disciplining myself. And what is discipline? The same root word as disciple, right? To become a follower of Jesus Christ. So in order to follow Christ more effectively, I finally had to face my Goliath, and which was the weight.
It's hard to do, isn't it? Because we emotionally eat, right? You eat to deal with stress, to deal with anxiety, or to just kind of decompress. And, I've always wanted my food to entertain me, for crying out loud. I want it to taste good. I want it to be good, rich in flavor. And it's hard to overcome that. I still kind of refuse to look at food as medicine, but that's probably the most healthy way to look at food is just, medicine for the body. So you eat better food that does more for your body than just eating for emotional reasons. And that is the hardest trick to overcome. So, all right, in the first month that I did carnivore, man, it was a roadblock. I was angry and upset almost the entire month because I really didn't want to do it. What was it like for you in that first 30 days?
Yeah, same thing. Like I said, I've grown up on meat, and it's like, how am I going to switch? I used to make fun of people who ate like this. I said, my food eats what you eat, that kind of thing, and so it was a big change for me, and so again, in that first month, so I said, okay, look, and I everything I'm telling you, it's great in theory, but when you're actually trying to live it and put it into practice, that's a whole different thing. And so I said, once I got past like the first 3 or 4 days, and quite frankly, Joe, in addition to the prayer piece, my wife was a huge part of it. But I hear the music, so I can tell the rest when we get back.
Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers is our guest. DeaconHarold.com is his website. On the other side of the break, we'll continue this conversation about that difficulty, our support structure, why we ought to be doing this, but also how do we make Lent penitential, not just self-improvement. I think a lot of times we get ready for Lent, we are thinking about, what could I do? I could exercise more. I could fast more. I could eat less or do whatever. Let's make sure our intentions are straight. More with that from Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers coming up on A Catholic Take right after this very, very quick break. Don't go anywhere, but do share us with a friend. We'll be right back.
What you're offering and giving to me, you deserve to get back because you're offering more than I can give.
I learned so much through the Stations on the Cross. I listen to the radio station daily, and I absolutely love it.
I was attending the chapel and places like that, and through your programs, I was able to find out how other Protestants had come back into the Catholic Church. God bless the Station of the Cross.
Donate today at thestationofthecross.com.
Hello, this is Steve Gleason with your 1-minute tool for Catholic evangelism. Here's the question. Should churches have a structure of hierarchy? Your average non-Catholic evangelical church would say, no, not needed. Why? Each church or denomination should be autonomous and choose their own way of governing. Well, that's wrong. Hierarchy engenders pride and ego. Same as false humility. What works in Tulsa may not work in Paris. Let's not forget that Jesus and his church cross international boundaries. So my Catholic friend, here's your toolbox for evangelism. Natural reason, the Bible, and the church. Natural reason says all social and legal institutions necessitate certain human boundaries and designated leadership. Religion is not exempt. The Bible, St. Peter, St. James, John, and Paul's letters show clear standards of jurisdiction and authority with ramifications if ignored. And the Catholic Church says St. Peter was given a chair, and from that authoritative chair, the Holy Spirit was promised to lead the chair till Christ comes. That is safe and that is right. This is Steve Gleason with Catholic Questions Live.
As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent from your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. The Station of the Cross thanks our supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. Good to be on with you. Coming up at the top of the hour, we say goodbye to the radio and we stay on the live video streams on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. If you want to hang out and interact directly, we would love to chat with you personally. Just find us there, A Catholic Take, Station of the Cross, or Joe McClain. Just search for us on those platforms. I guarantee you're going to find us and chime in. We'd love to have you. Deborah Saint says, good subjects. I started carnivore last month. I won't lie, it's been tough to get rid of those carbs. Yay and amen, Deborah. I know all about it. Deacon Harold is our guest. DeaconHarold.com is his website. We're talking about losing weight, but also getting ready for Lent because Deacon, as we were saying just before the break, it's important to be in shape. It's important that we get our life and act together, both spiritually, physically, mentally. All these categories are important. And Lent is one of those seasons where we're like, it's almost like a New Year's resolution. We start Lent, we're like, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to fast. I'm going to eat less or whatever. And those tend to be good ideas, but they're really just self-improvement, not necessarily penitential. So how do we do both? How do we get our act together, get disciplined, find a way through the difficulties of getting started, and yet keeping it penitential and less self-improvement? Deacon Harold, what do you say?
Yeah, those are excellent points, Joe. And here's the thing that's interesting about Lent. How many fasting days do we actually have in Lent? Do you know, Joe?
40.
I mean, that's our big penitential season as Catholics, right? And how many fasting days do we have?
Well, you have to technically fast on Fridays every Lent. So that's a lot less than 40. But old school Catholics are going to add Wednesdays to that. And then I can't remember if there are any rogation days in the season of Lent either. So I don't know. How many? What are we talking, 10?
1.
No,
Ash Wednesday.
You're going to say Ash Wednesday. Yeah.
Well, think about it. Fridays are abstinence days, not fasting
you got
days.
me.
That means you can't eat meat on Fridays, right? And some people say, well, there's 2. Good Friday. Good Friday's not in Lent, right? Lent ends with the start of the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday, right? So the only fasting day is Ash Wednesday. That's horrible. I mean, that's our big penitential season for our Muslim brothers and sisters, right? Ramadan, they fast every day. I mean, fast every day. So we got a lot of work to do. So why is fasting important? In fact, remember, every Ash Wednesday, Joe, we hear the reading where Jesus says, when you fast, not if you fast, when you fast. There was an expectation. Why? Why is fasting important? Has nothing to do with, now, well, people are finding out now, right? They're doing the fasting diets and things like that, or intermittent fasting and stuff. Well, Catholics knew about this for 2,000 years, right? And even before that, right? In the Old Testament, so what's the value of fasting? Because when you're fasting from food, for example, or you can even fast from other things as well, something that you enjoy, like your favorite television program or sports or something like that, that you become hungry, right? Your stomach is growling, you become hungry, you have some cravings. What does that remind you of? It reminds you that what you're really hungering for, what you're really craving, what you're really desiring is a deep, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ, right? That's why fasting has been practiced by monks ever since St. Anthony in the desert in the beginning. And for thousands of years, monks have been fasting, and the church incorporates fasting. As you said, there are some ember days and things like that, but I think we could incorporate that more, not just into our penitential season as Catholics, but into our own very lives, and even outside of Lent. For example, Joe, I fast every Friday for my family, right? We talk about the parable of the talents. How am I supposed to give God back, a tenfold, 50-fold, 100-fold of the talents that he gave to me? And I find that fasting is one of the key ways to do that.
Yeah. In fact, Jake, our producer, was pointing out that the Ember Days during Lent are Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday after first Sunday of Lent. So in the old 62 Missal, you're going to find traditional Catholics are going to be fasting far frequently all throughout the season of Lent. But in the Novus Ordo Missal, it's been reduced to just Ash Wednesday. So, but the reality is, that's a minimum standard. We're always welcome to do more, right? We can always increase and up the thing. I remember starting intermittent fasting a few years back when I basically only reduced myself down to 2 meals. Now I only eat once a day and have been doing that for 6 months. And I would love to say it's because I have pure intentions, but the reality is I was trying to deal with some health concerns. But I think I've built it in now. So at night when I'm feeling the hunger pains, I think I've been doing exactly what you said. And that when I feel those pains, I remind myself of the suffering of Christ. I remind myself of why it's important for me to be in shape, to lose the weight, to get my health together so that I can be present to my wife and my children, which is my vocation. And I think that's the opportunity that we have this season of Lent. What would you recommend? Do you think people should increase? Do you think Catholics should try to increase their fasting on a daily or a weekly basis during the season of Lent, especially if they're not used to it? What would you recommend for them to get started?
Yeah, like when I grew up, Joe, with my mom is the Catholic in our family, Wednesdays and Fridays were fasting days, not just abstinence days. Those were fasting days. So I would recommend increasing the fasting. Again, fasting, not just abstinence, not eating meat, but fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays. Now, just like when you lose a sense, right? If someone goes blind or someone goes deaf, the other senses kind of pick up, right? They become heightened. And I think the same thing is true in the spiritual discipline as well. Because when you start fasting, right, that's the body, the mind and the soul kind of pick up the slack there. Right. So when you're fasting, you said when you're hungry, I find, I'm more into my prayer. I'm more mindful. My mind is sharper. My heart is more focused on my prayer life. My prayer becomes deeper and more intense, during those times. You said yourself, Joe, you focus on Christ crucified when you're having those hunger pains. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The other parts, the mind and the soul begin to pick up the slack from the fasting. And it all works together in a holistic approach to deepening our intimacy with God so that we can truly fulfill our mission and our calling and our vocation in life. And we're talking about specifically men, but obviously this pertains to men and women as well.
I want to go back to something you were saying just before we went to break, and that was talking about your wife, your support structure. I couldn't have accomplished over 100 pounds in a year if it wasn't, and it was actually a lot less than a year when I first started. It was about late August, but nonetheless, I couldn't have done it without my wife and my family because, just think about the practical side of it, let alone the spiritual and moral support that they offer. Like the need to have a separate diet, a separate menu, a separate, food plan than everybody else is on creates complications, extra costs, just a hassle that they have to help deal with in order to make it possible for me to have the kind of opportunity to stay focused and to stay disciplined. And then to do that on top of the fact that I complained for the first 30 days, probably every day because I was so miserable. What was that like for you?
Yeah. Fortunately for me, my wife's, so she goes, I'll do it with you. And most of our kids are already been vegetarians, which is not unusual in the Pacific Northwest. So as far as the support, she's like, I'll do it with you, and so we kind of did it together. She didn't have to, she still eats meat. But it was like, I'm with you, the two of us become one, right? And the marriage vows that we took, therefore a man leaves his father, mother, clings to his wife, the two become one. So we did it together and it's been wonderful. And our marriage has gotten better, Joe, as a result as well.
Praise be to God. Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, so grateful that you were able to join us today and help us get ready for the Lent. And congratulations on your incredible weight loss. You look great, my brother. DeaconHarold.com is his website. God bless you, Deacon. Have a great day.
Thank you too, Joe. Great to see you.
All right, we're going to say goodbye to the radio. We're going to stay on for the after show. It's a half hour of interaction directly with you on one of our live video feeds, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Rumble. Just search for A Catholic Take, The Station of the Cross, or Joe McClain. You'll come across us. Chime in. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll see you back.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for February 16th.
Praise be to God. Welcome to the after show, where we get a lot more casual about the conversation, and you get to decide kind of where we go and how we do it. But we do need you to chime in. So wherever you're hanging out today, do let us know you're on board. Tell us where you're from. I'd like to know. Praise be to God. I see our insider crews here hanging out. Alberto, good morning to you from the UK. Alberto, how was life in the UK? I'd like to know. Let me know. By the way, I'm going to put it in the chat while I'm thinking about it. I'm going to put the link to the sign-up form. If you guys want to join, get in on the inside, and have access to the private Telegram group. There is an A Catholic Take private Telegram group. So what you do is you join the insiders. I'm going to paste that, copy this. Join the insiders. You click that, join the insiders, and you can get access to the Telegram group. It's a private Telegram group where we can hang out. The conversation can continue. You can share whatever you like there. We just ask you to be respectful, but otherwise, friends, family, life, interests, conversation, whatever's on your mind, whatever's on your heart, you're able to share there. Just got to sign up, and I'm putting the link in all the places where I see people are hanging out today. But Angel Knight, good morning to you. She says, apologize. My signal at work is terrible. The show cuts in and out. Oh, I'm so sorry, Angel. That's unfortunate. Yvonne, good morning. Bridget Dunn, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I think I saw Kim Sunderman on earlier. Praise be to Jesus. David L., good morning. David L. says, I've always said a fast without prayer is just a diet. Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, let's be honest. How many Catholics do we know who go into the holy season of Lent saying, I'm gonna eat less. I'm gonna exercise. And doesn't it? I mean, isn't it? It's just self-improvement, right? I mean, it's just self-improvement. So I think it's important that we remember it's supposed to be penance, not self-improvement. Although it's great to do self-improvement. I'm not opposed to that. In fact, one of the things that I've often recommended is as we give things up for Lent, there's some things we can take on as well. And one of those things is just reading. And that can be very penitential for some folks because they don't like to read. They don't have the patience to read. So what are you reading in the holy season of Lent? One book that I highly recommend, I don't have it on my shelf here, is Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence by St. Columbaire, which yesterday was his feast day. Excellent book. It's The Secret to Happiness is what it's called, Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence. You should check it out. Alberto said, housing costs $60,000 20 years ago. Now it's about, or pounds. He's in the UK. Now the average house is about 300,000 pounds. I'd say it's about the same here in that regard, especially where I live, but it obviously varies. Earlier, our friend Norman from Hawaii was saying it was about $1 million on average. When I lived in Hawaii in the 90s, I had friends that had apartments in town in Honolulu, and I mean, literally, the apartment was 500 to 700 square feet, maybe. Not even big. It was small, tiny apartment, concrete cinder blocks. Okay, the apartment was made from concrete cinder blocks. No real view, and they were paying at least $1,000 a month, and that was the 90s. So, Hawaii has always been terribly expensive. It's an island, so everything gets imported there. It's obviously very costly to live. And I was very tempted when I left Hawaii in 1995. I was tempted when I got out of the Marine Corps to go back. In fact, I had a friend who I had served with who said, you ought to come back. We'll live together. We'll be roommates. I had no job. I was very tempted to go back over there and live because I enjoyed being in Hawaii. I enjoyed the local friends that I made there. And unfortunately, I committed a lot of grave moral sins, but I did love being there. And I was tempted to do it. However, it's a pretty far place to be away from support structure. So ultimately, I made the choice not to go. And the rest is, as they say, history. If I had gone back, probably would have never met my wife, probably would have never become Catholic, and my kids wouldn't be alive today. So by the glory of God, things worked out. Gunslinger, good morning to you. He says, I was about 250 pounds or more back when I was in high school. Wow. So you've struggled with weight too then, my friend. Paleo. Are you doing paleo? Who's doing paleo? Mike, are you doing paleo? Mike, you're on Brick Wall's on paleo, I think. Now, Mike, explain to me paleo versus carnivore. What's the difference? Let me know. Brick Wall says, I've been on paleo for years. I have stayed down from a peak of 50 pounds heavier than I am now. Gunslinger says, last year I did an extreme fast every day except Sundays. Now, when you say extreme fast every day, do you mean you ate one meal a day and it was small, or you didn't eat except for Sundays? Like, what do you mean there? Empty One, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today over on Rumble. Glad to see you here. It says intermittent fasting and carnivore are a way to go. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm only eating once and I'm on carnivore. On occasion, I do have cheater moments. Can we call them cheater moments? Like Thanksgiving and Christmas, I did keto instead of just carnivore. And then on occasion, I only eat one meal, but if I want a snack, I only snack once, and I'll have a slice of cheese, and I have 100% baking. Like if you go to the baker's aisle in the grocery store, you can get the cocoa bars, the 100% cocoa. There's nothing else in them, just pure 100% cocoa. They are not sweet. There's no sugar, nothing like that whatsoever. It's just pure cocoa, but it's like candy bar shape. If you get that, okay, I would just eat that. Like it's not sweet, it's bitter, but I love chocolate. It's my favorite vegetable out of all vegetables. Chocolate's that, right? So it's great. But now that I've gone, because the first 3 months of carnivore, I did 100% carnivore. And then the last 3 months, I relaxed just a slight tinge. And so now I've added monk fruit sweetener into my coffee on the weekend. So right now, I'm only drinking black coffee right now. I only do black coffee during the week for the most part. And then on the weekends, I will spice my coffee up because I like fruit coffee personally. I always liked it sweet. I'd always put honey in it, ton of honey. I would not do sugar, but I would do like honey. But I can't do honey anymore. Honey's carbs. So can't do that. So I will do monk fruit in the liquid form. But if you take that monk fruit in a liquid form and you put a couple of drops on a chunk of that 100% cocoa and rub it all in, oh, man, it's a great way to cheat. Let me just put it that way. It's a great way to cheat. Yeah, honey is sugar. Yeah, I know, Jacob. Honey is no bueno. I mean, it tastes good, and especially it's also good for your allergies, of course, because you're getting the pollen locally, so it helps you kind of with your allergy situation. And it is a decent alternative to sugar. It's better. It's definitely better. I agree. It's 100% better. However, honey is carbs. And so it basically turns into the similar effect. The difference, the big benefit to honey over sugar is processed and is not great for your body. And it feeds your cancers, and it feeds your inflammation, and it feeds all kinds of problems. Honey reduces that. It's a better solution. So we don't ever use sugar at our place. We use honey, but honey does equal carbs. So there's that. And when you're on carnivore, you can have no carbs. So yeah, I had to give up honey, unfortunately. Brick Wall says, paleo, meat, fruit, veg, no more than 50 grams of carbs daily. Brick Wallace says, I try to fast regularly as well, though more for my spiritual life. Now, the one thing about Brick Wall says, I'm not a person who could be 300 pounds. And I can't even imagine you, Brick Wall, at 300 pounds. I can't even imagine you at 200 pounds, Brick Wall. What do you weigh, 175 if you're lucky? I mean, I don't know, man. I can't fathom you that big at all. It doesn't compute in my brain. Andrea Lamort, good morning. Thanks for hanging out. Eric, good morning. What to do, carnivore or plant-based? You know, well, okay, so one of the point, Eric, that Deacon Harold brought up is because when I saw him, he was in town. I've known Deacon Harold for years. In fact, in 2009, I was producing a radio show called Behold the Man. It was a half hour. It was I was producing it out of my home studio. And there was an apostolate in Brooklyn that was redistributing that content through radio stations throughout Latin America and a few here in the United States. And then some of my interviews were being picked up by Sirius Satellite Radio in New York. And so I was doing that, but I called it Behold the Man. Well, at the same time, Deacon Harold had a television series on EWTN called Behold the Man. So he caught wind of my podcast and reached out to me. He's like, hey, man, why do you have the name of my show on your podcast? And we've been friends ever since. He's a great guy, super awesome dude. In fact, when I filmed my documentary film, The Other Side of Fear, I knew immediately that I wanted Deacon Harold to be a part of that project. And we had an opportunity. He was in town, and I was able to obtain permission from some local generous Catholics who own a private chapel in their backyard to let me film there, because they were going to host him. They were letting him sleep at their place while he was going to give a talk the next day. And so their chapel is a very beautiful private chapel, a family chapel, and quite lovely, very, very ornate. And we were able to film him in that space, which was amazing. Gabriel Castillo, who's also been on our program, he helped me film that interview, as a matter of fact. So Deacon Harold and I have been friends for a long time. So when I saw him about a month or two ago now, however long it's been, and I didn't know he was losing weight, and he didn't know I was losing weight. So we're like, whoa, bro, look, you look great. So we sat down and at a steak dinner, and I took him to a steak restaurant because I didn't ask him like how he was losing weight until we sat down. And I'm like, so what's your secret? How have you been doing this? Plant-based. I'm like, oh, dude, I just brought you to a steak restaurant. Like, can you find anything to eat here? I'm like, oh, this is embarrassing. And then he started telling me about how his doctor said, blood type can make a difference. Your makeup can make a difference on how certain diets respond in your body. And he actually recommended a book, which I never got, and I should look at it. But he talked about how some people are going to respond better to plant-based and some are going to respond better to meat-based. My body seems to respond very well to meat, so I'm going to assume that that's the case. But he's been doing great. He's been having fantastic results, as you know. Alberto says, I'm tall and slim, but it's genetic on both sides of my family. Although my weight has risen, one reason I cut out beer. Beer is carbs, bro. Carbs. Alberto says, I cut out white sugar 10 years ago in drinks. Yeah, sugar is no bueno. Sugar causes cancer. Deborah says, I lost 6 pounds last month on carnivore. I need to lose a little weight, but my main purpose is for healing. That was mine too, Deborah. Says, I'm a traditional Catholic and believe in fasting for the entire Lenten season. When it's not Lent every Friday, when I was much younger, I would fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. Eating pure butter is good when you have cravings. Okay, so there's another thing you could do. And we did this in the early days. There's all kinds of carnivore recipes you can look for. And one of the things was to take butter, and I think we boiled it. But I think we boiled the butter. I can't remember exactly now, but like there's a thing you can do with butter. Like, is this a chunk of butter? And I think we might have done it with like a whole half a stick or a whole stick, because my daughter was doing it with me. and like we boiled it or something, but we melted it down and boiled it. I can't remember exactly, but it basically gets to a state, and then you put it in the fridge and let it harden again, and it basically tastes like it's almost sweet. It almost had a sweet taste to it, and it was a way to create like little cookie chips or whatever that kind of help with those cravings. You sear it and make brown butter bites. That's exactly it, Deborah. Thanks for telling me that. Yeah, we haven't done that though in a while. That first 30 days, actually the first 3 months. If I'm being honest, the first 3 months were rough. My problem with the first 3 months mostly were the one flavor profile you get, which is savory. You only get savory. There's no relief from it. There's nothing cool, or like you don't get like I wanted a salad more than I wanted anything in those first 3 months. Like I wanted to crush a salad, but you don't get that. So everything is savory in flavor profile, and it just felt overwhelming to me. Greasy or savory, just overwhelmed, and I was forcing myself to eat this food. Now, a ribeye steak always tastes fantastic. No exception to that rule. I could eat that every day, all day. It'd be great. But most of the other food, just that savory profile, I wanted to scream so many times. Chicken wings, as long as you don't have the sauce. Yeah, chicken by itself is great. Chicken with sauce and spices, that's not so carnivore. Yvonne, caramelized. Well, then the problem is, are you producing those sugars? Part of the reason why you can't have the vegetables is because they also produce sugars, natural sugars, but sugars all the same. Billy, good morning to you. Are these extreme diets like carnivore and veganism against virtue of temperance? Well, I think it depends. Billy is the answer. It really just depends on the circumstances. If you're putting your life at risk, well, then I guess you have to consider that for sure. But I think most of us probably won't be. The reality is, like the one meal I have, for instance, I eat once a day, and I get all the protein I need out of the food that I have. I can have dairy. You can have things that come naturally from animals. And there's a recommendation to eat a lot of organ meat as well, organ like liver, for instance, because that adds a lot back more nutrients. And ultimately, I don't intend to stay on carnivore forever. I'm just continuing to lose weight, going to get down to something that I hope can be more manageable. And then pray that in the first time I try a carb, I don't gain 87 pounds back, but nonetheless. But, in the one meal I have, I can have all the calories for that day in that one meal, and you feel very full. The reality is intermittent fasting is reducing the amount of insulin your body produces. So most people who are overweight, it's really a problem of insulin production. We're producing insulin too often, too frequently. So if you had 3 meals a day and just didn't snack in between meals, you ate and then you had nothing else. You drink water, no sweet drinks, none of that stuff that's going to trigger your insulins. And then you ate again 4 hours later, well, you have done intermittent fasting at that point. You have limited the insulin production. So calories matter as far as weight goes, but also the frequency with which you are producing insulin has a big effect. Because when you produce that insulin, your body goes into saving mode. It's like, okay, I'm going to save as much of this as energy as I can into fat cells. So by limiting insulin production, you are helping to switch your body from saving all the time to burning. So, ideally you would go maybe 2 meals a day or something like that. But going 1 meal a day is a lot more extreme. But ultimately, when you have as much room to move as I do, with weight, well, it's really not all that extreme, to be honest. I got a lot of fat to burn. It's different for different people, and everybody should. And I'm no expert on this, and I'm certainly not. I'm not don't take my medical advice, all right? But do your own research, do your own work, talk to your own doctors or whatever. Find experts and talk to them. I'm just sharing my own experiences here. Andrea says 4 blood types, 4 diets was an interesting book. The O blood type is the oldest. The population was meat eaters. Going on to say they have a lot of stomach acidity to break down meat. I think I'm in that category. I think I am O blood type, actually. Whereas an AB don't have the same acidity and should stick more to plant-based eating. It's not a perfect science, but makes sense. Yeah, that's kind of what Deacon Harold was saying, for sure. I do have a lot of acidity. I can tell you that much for sure. Boy, Yvonne, don't tempt me. Man, I'd love a good salad. Oh, just crush a good salad. I also saw a report that said if you just smell something sweet, your body begins to think about consuming it and begins the insulin production process, which basically ruins the next 4-hour window of fasting for you, even if you haven't eaten anything. I don't know if that's true, but man, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. So it's a rough piece of work. Billy says, so it just depends on the person and their discernment. Yeah, I would say so. But ultimately, especially as it pertains to penance and, the holy season of Lent, it should be a penitential season. So, go to your spiritual director and talk it over. Not everybody's going to be equal in that regard. So what would be penitential for you in your situation, your circumstances? You definitely want it to be penitential. Eating 2 meals a day and not 3 would be penitential for a lot of people. Eating maybe 3 meals but not snacking at all whatsoever, 0 snacks, might be penitential. Is it good for your body? Of course it is, but intent matters. So let's not be in self-improvement mode. Let's be in penitential mode. Self-improvement being a side benefit. Let's see. Deborah says, I'm thinking of going ketovore if and when I meet my health goals, but never going back to the regular. Yeah, I'm kind of afraid, Deborah, that I may never get to go back to regular. I'm probably going to have to live keto, and then my guess is, as soon as I go keto regularly and I'm eating some vegetables more often, having more carbs, that my weight's going to start to rise. The question in my mind is, how quickly does it rise? How much does it rise? If it just rises a little bit, fair enough. But if it really starts to kind of like going sliding backwards, then my guess is I'm probably going to have to maybe once every month or 2, 3 months, I don't know, have to go back on carnivore for a few weeks and just kind of regulate it. That's my guess. Because I tell you, if I just smell it, it's going to be ugly. That's always been my whole life. Kim Wilcox says it's great when spouses do things together because they succeed as one unit. It certainly makes life a lot easier, 100%. June Ybarra says, my wife and I fast and we push fasting to others. It magnifies prayers. Yeah, it sure does. I agree. Kim goes on to say, I am O positive and I can feel when I am not eating the right foods like meat. I love veggies, but need to love meat. Yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't love vegetables when I was a kid. I mean, who does? But I love vegetables now. I mean, like asparagus, that's so good. Brussels sprouts, yummy. I can have Brussels sprouts. That's keto. But a salad, man, I love a good salad, especially when it's like tastes like candy. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's got nuts and cheeses and thick sugary sauces all over it and bacon bits and oh man, it's just like a dessert. It's like going to the IHOP. It's just good stuff. Brickwall says, yep, 175. I was 187 when I got out of boot camp. In fact, I think I might have shared this story with you guys before, but the day before graduation from boot camp, my parents were both there by the grace of God and a sheer miracle because they'd been divorced for a long time. And they were both there. And the night before, we met the parents, and they walked straight past me. They didn't even recognize me because I had lost so much weight that they couldn't recognize me. So they were blown away. My father was telling me the other day, remembering that moment, it was a big deal. He just couldn't believe it. But I wasn't able to maintain 187. It was really hard. In fact, I ended up going back. I ended up having to go to see a naval doctor when I was in the Marine Corps who gave me the BMI test. And basically, he said I should weigh, I want to say 210, 220, somewhere in there. He said that was my weight. So they gave me what they call a chit, basically saying that I didn't have to meet the 187 standard. I could meet the higher standard, which was helpful anyway. Sci-Fi Mike says, I'm around 280. I think I would be good around 250. I have a big frame with fair amount of muscles. And Sci-Fi Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but you drive a truck, right? So part of your issue is you're sitting down 12 hours a day or however often much you're driving. So that makes life a lot harder as well, which is, one of the things I wanted to talk to Deacon Harold about. We didn't get a chance, was about exercise. So one loses weight by what they eat. One gets in shape by their exercise. When you go carnivore and you're starting to drop weight, you tend to lose mass. You're losing fat, but you're also losing some muscle. So at some point, you do have to actually start to physically exercise to kind of maintain strength and get into shape, or else you become weak. That kind of thing. So it's difficult when you're sitting all day long. Man, that makes life a little rough for finding a routine that kind of works. Now, the good news is you can lose weight just by reducing what you eat. Just sheer dropping calories and the amount and the times at which you're producing insulin, that alone will help you lose weight. No carbs. Go no carbs, and you're going to lose weight. It's not rocket science, but that's not the long-term plan. You do have to come up with a better long-term plan. Brown butter, says Empty One. Brick wall, butter and coffee. Yeah. So here's how I frou-frou-ize my coffee now. So I'm drinking it black right now. It's black. But on the weekends, I will use the Dutch processed coffee or cocoa. So if you go to the baker's aisle, you can get like a tub of Hershey's. They also sell them with other brands. A Dutchized cocoa powder. It's 100% cocoa powder, nothing else in it. But it's like they call it the Dutchized process, and I'm not sure what that means, but I do know it tastes better than just straight up cocoa powder. So if you can get the Dutchized one, Hershey's makes one, others make them as well, but look for the words Dutchized process. 100% cocoa, nothing else in it. You don't want anything else in it, right? Just cocoa. I'll put that in there, and I'll put some drops of monk fruit in there, and then I will. We also got a little bottle of peppermint oil that can be consumed. You got to be careful. Not all oils can be consumed. But my wife, who's into that, made sure she got a little bottle of peppermint, and it is super potent. I mean, we got a dropper just because we had to be so precise. Because when I first started, I was like pouring in there, ruined the whole thing, couldn't take it, eyes watering, disgusting, couldn't handle it, threw it all away. So we got a dropper so that we could put a drop in the cup of this size. This is a massive vessel. I will put 2 drops of the peppermint in there. Just 2. Anything smaller, only 1 drop. So I'm doing the cocoa. I'm doing the monk fruit, a liquid form, not the powdered form. I can't stand Swerve or other sweeteners. Even if they're keto approved, can't do them. Monk fruit's about all I can handle. And then I'll put the peppermint in there sometimes. I'll put cinnamon, and I'll put what's the other spice? The Christmas spice that you'd put on a nutmeg. Thank you. I'll put in nutmeg, and then I put in heavy whipping cream, not half and half. Heavy whipping cream. Stir that all up. That's how I frou-frou-ize my coffee on the weekends. Brickwall says you were 128. Man, I got socks that weighed 128 pounds. 128 pounds in boot camp. I can't even imagine what that looked like. I was 17 and had not finished growing. Yeah, me too. I still have all my uniforms. My sons wear my uniforms. Just, the little younger ones that wear them for play. And I have my old hat, my old Marine Corps cover. I can't even put it on my head. Even when I've cut my hair, I can't. My head has grown since then. It's hilarious. Oh, Sci-Fi, you write software at the gym every morning. Who was it I met at the Baltimore conference that drove a truck then. I confused you, Sci-Fi Mike. Mea culpa, maxima culpa. I confused you with somebody else who I talked to in Baltimore year before last who drove a truck, and I can't remember who that is now. Gunslinger says, I hated the BMI. They need to update it or something. At 185, they said I needed to be 155. Yikes. But I could suck in my stomach a little and count all my ribs. Yeah, yikes. Sci-Fi says, yeah, BMI numbers tell me I need to lose 100 pounds. I would have to stop eating and start going to the gym. Yeah, it's an issue. It's 100% an issue. Very difficult, especially since I have been big all my life, says Norman in Hawaii. Yeah, it is difficult. Kim Wilcox says, I'm on the Mediterranean diet. What's the Mediterranean diet? You eat lamb chops. You have pita bread all the time. Oof, man, that would taste good right now. Oh, it'd crush some fresh. Ugh. Where Damassi's? There's a restaurant called Damassi's here. It's a Mediterranean style restaurant. Oh, I could smell it from here already. Don says, went into boot camp, came out 165, now 225. Well, you're still doing good there, Don. I haven't been 225 since I left the Marine Corps. It's been a long time. Eating pure butter, says Deborah, is good when you have cravings. Deacon Harold is the real deal. You sear, okay, they were talking about that butter earlier. I'm thinking of going, yeah, sugar-free syrups. Yeah, the other challenge, though, when you're on carnivore and you're trying to have some sweet taste and you're trying to find like a keto carnivore approved method of having a sweet taste, the trouble you have is you are playing with fire. You are tempting yourself. And every time I want to go, like my wife bought for Christmas and Valentine's, she got this chocolate treat that is like keto approved and it tastes sweet. And now all I want to do is have more. It's like, now that I've had the taste, it's like, I'm an addict. I just want to be in the corner over there pounding chocolate. So it's a slippery slope. And if you're really trying to be serious, I think the better recommendation would be avoid all sweets and all sweet tastes. Like for the first 3 months, 0 sweet tastes for me. None. The last 3 months, I added that monk fruit thing in. But the first 3, 0. You got to give yourself the best chance to succeed. Nancy, good morning to you. Muscles are built in the gym and revealed in the kitchen. Yay and amen. That's well said. doTERRA essential oils are fine for consuming. All right. Praise be to God. Can't you add soy milk? I'm not a soy boy, Alberto. I'm not going to add soy. Sorry. Soy does bad things. It's not good for men. I don't think soy is good for men. I don't think men should have soy. Not a good thing. EU wants fly milk. That's terrible, Alberto. That's horrible. Don't have fly milk. That's my advice. I'm a 33 waist. Hey, listen, I'm down 10 inches on the waist or something like that. So it's headed in the right direction. Let's pray it can stay that way. Hey, God bless you guys. Tomorrow, my friend, the Brick Wall is going to be one of my guests tomorrow. Also, I have a guy who's going to be on in the first segment who has gone to the train wreck site in Ohio and interviewed the locals. We're going to get his take on what the locals are saying about all of this. Some of them have been asked to sign their rights away and hold harmless the train and all of the rest. We're going to talk about that, plus traditional Catholicism, all tomorrow on A Catholic Take. Join us then. God love you. Share us with a friend.